So, good morning, everyone. This is the fifth episode of the Impact Virtual Exchange podcast. Impact is a European funded by the Erasmus project that envisions to develop the soft skills of students, of youths in the areas of Israel and Morocco and in Europe through virtual exchange activities. However, through the Impact, we envision also to provide a training and also to enhance the literacy of staff regarding the definitions of what is virtual exchange, to train them on how to use digital tools during virtual exchanges sessions. That for me, my name is like Konstantinos Petridis, I'm coming from the Hellenic Mediterranean University and I'm the coordinator of this effort, to provide also tools and technical skills that can make the virtual exchange like more interactive. So within the framework of this effort, we're organizing some podcasts with experts or more experienced people. And we are very happy today that we host Professor Kyria Fynardi, whose scholarly work has significantly contributed to our understanding of a virtual exchange as a pedagogical, linguistic, and an internationalization strategy in higher education. Regarding the last comment, I'm very fan of Kyria Fynardi. As a Vice Director of Internationalization in Hellenic Mediterranean University in Crete, one of our priorities is the activities, the support of internationalization at home activities, and virtual exchange plays a significant role. So before I will continue, I would like to introduce Professor Kyria Fynardi from the Federal University of Espirito, Santo in Brazil. Thank you very much. And this is like how technology can bring people together, and we appreciate this a lot. Her work has received more than 3,000 citations, and this shows somehow her expertise. However, by listening Professor Fynardi, you are going to realize the expertise that has. So, Kyria, may I call you Kyria?
Yes, please.
Actually, this is very Greek. Kyria means,
And
mix.
Brazilian too.
All right. Excellent. So I would like to give you the floor to introduce yourself and how you are involved in virtual exchanges, blended type of activities. The floor is yours, and thank you very much. And we appreciate a lot, even that is one day before Christmas, you are with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Costas. As you can see, it is very hot, as you can see from what I'm wearing in Brazil, because Christmas in Brazil is also very hot. It is the summer season. So thank you very much for the opportunity for being here with you. I'm also a big fan of Costas and this project and this program. I am Professor Kyria Fynardi, as Costa said, from the Federal University of Espirito Santo in the beautiful and sunny and hot city of Vitória in Brazil. Also acting at the moment as the president of ILA, the International Association of Applied Linguistics, which is a confederation of national affiliates with 35 affiliates distributed in all the continents in different countries. And today I'm very happy to be here to talk to you about virtual exchange, because I'm not sure I am the expert in virtual exchange, but an experienced, let's say, person who started working with virtual exchange as a possibility to give more access and inclusion of internationalization activities in the Global South. So to contextualize maybe where I'm speaking from and where I'm coming from, I've been working with inclusion and integration of technologies in education, especially higher education in Brazil. And even before the pandemic, I've been trying to show the potential of digital technologies to enhance and expand access to internationalization strategies. I don't know if this is the reality in Europe. I think no, because usually in higher education institutions in Europe, about 5% of students are physically mobile, whereas in the Global South and the context where I'm speaking from in Brazil, usually this average is less than 1% of students that can actually engage in academic mobility. So even before the pandemic, I've been trying to show, stakeholders and my colleagues the importance of having virtual exchange as a strategy to enlarge and expand internationalization strategies for more. But it was only after the pandemic that I was actually able to make this part of the curriculum because of the social distancing measures. So I've been doing and practicing. So I've been not only researching the integration of technology in education, but as a practitioner and as a teacher educator, I've been able to use virtual exchange as a part of the curriculum, part of what I do since the pandemic only in a systematic way. And that is why I don't know if I am an expert. I am an experienced, let's say, practitioner who's been doing this for the past 5 years in a consistent way. So very happy to be here with you today.
So thank you very much, Kyria. I totally agree with you. I mean, virtual exchange can provide a tool in order to be more inclusive, as you mentioned, and also we can see how technology-based learning can be diverted to more people and to engage more people. And yes, in Europe we are very lucky with the Erasmus project, and actually we are very fortunate with the Erasmus project that even though that the target for mobility is 20%, we have reached the average or the best statistics around 12%, and the European University Alliances, they targeted 50% of student mobility, but of all types. So in Europe now, we have realized, of course, after the pandemic, that how virtual mobilities can contribute to build an internationalization culture within the universities. However, in Latin America or in Global South, it looks like it's the only opportunity in order students to build an internationalization culture within the university. So my question is like, theoretically, how can we define what is a virtual exchange? Because I have seen a lot of terminologies like teleconference,
Yes.
virtual exchange, COILs, collaborative international learning. What is the definition of the virtual exchange, and what is the difference between a COIL and the virtual exchange?
This is a good question. Some people would think that these are synonymous and that most of these definitions can be applied. Telecollaboration, COIL, which is collaborative online international learning, virtual exchange, telecollaboration, etc. But I would say that there's a little difference because for COIL, for example, whereas COIL involves the putting together of two different classrooms, virtual exchange is much broader and it encompasses different initiatives and strategies, not necessarily two classrooms in different geographically different places. It could also be used as, different strategies to put together students not only in the same course, maybe in different courses and in parts of the course, and also staff and teachers collaborating together. And so to answer your question, I think that these terms could be used interchangeably, although there is, as I said, the small difference. I prefer to use virtual exchange as I think the term is more broader. And in terms of how this relates to, internationalization strategies, as you asked, I would think and position virtual exchange as a transformative strategy and perhaps the most important strategy of internationalization of education, particularly of higher education, which is the context where I work, because it is aligned with approaches such as internationalization at home, internationalization of the curriculum. So rather than seeing virtual exchange as a substitute for physical mobility, as we were thinking in the beginning of these initiatives, I now tried and I understand virtual exchange as a pedagogical and epistemic space where both students and teachers and also staff, why not, can engage across borders in ways that are more inclusive, dialogical, and sustainable, especially if we consider the numbers that we mentioned now, global north and global south. So from this perspective, I would say that virtual exchange is not only about, the amplification of access, but perhaps more importantly about the rethinking of whose knowledges, whose language, in the plural, intentionally, whose knowledges, whose languages, and whose voices can circulate and integrate internationally. So from a theoretical standpoint, I would, my work and also my experience with virtual exchange would conceptualize virtual exchange as this third space, which is a space of negotiation where languages, identities, knowledges intersect and can and should be, I think, resignified. And in this sense, I would say that virtual exchange is not merely a technological solution or an add-on to classroom pedagogies, but more importantly, it is a socially and politically situated practice that can either reproduce or disrupt linguistic hierarchies, epistemic dominance, and colonial legacies in higher education.
Excellent. This is also my point of view. I can see virtual exchange as a pedagogy with a great impact also to the physical way. How do we teach? From the moment that I have been involved in virtual exchanges, the way has changed. My way of teaching has also has changed. I'm more a facilitator in the physical classroom because of the virtual exchanges than I was before. Regarding now the challenges about virtual exchanges from the point of view of students or from the point of view of staff, of academics, what are the main hesitations or the challenges staff from your experience can face during the organization of a virtual exchange and the identification of partners? What are the most common challenges and what are your suggestions in order to overcome these challenges based on your experience?
I think that for the staff, perhaps the greatest difficulty and challenge for designing and implementing virtual exchange is the lack of recognition and institutional support. Most of the initiatives of virtual exchange that we have seen, especially those in the Global South, they are personal or individual, led by, teachers, professors who believe in the power and potential of virtual exchange, but they lack recognition and support from the institutions. And so this makes the implementation difficult, not only for staff, but also for students. To give you one example from my experience. So as I mentioned, though I was researching and promoting the integration of technologies in education and trying to motivate other colleagues to engage with virtual exchange, it was only after the pandemic and the suspension of the physical social distance measures that interrupted physical contact and also international travels that I was able to implement virtual exchange as part of my curriculum. And so I was doing this for the 2 years of the pandemic, and not without problems, but at least I had institutional support in the senses we could integrate this in the curriculum, we could include this in the hours of the classes that we were teaching. We had paid platforms by the institution where we could use in the virtual exchanges. And then when the pandemic was suspended and the physical mobility was enabled again, and the classes returned to in-person classes, even after months of planning with my colleagues, in this case, I was doing a virtual exchange with colleagues in Turkey. So even though we had spent months in planning and integrating the activities within our curriculum, I received an email 3 p.m. on April 13 saying, as of tomorrow, classes are presential again. So all online activities are suspended and prohibited. And so I had to, continue the virtual exchange and the activities that I was doing online as a complementary activity, but I could not integrate it in the curriculum anymore. And this makes, it brings a lot of difficulties, not only for the teachers involved, the planning involved, but also for the students. In our case, in my case, in Vitória, at UFES, where I work, most of our students, for example, they come to the university and to campus by bus. They won't bring their notebooks to university. And we don't have a space in the university where they can connect and have, privacy for these individual meetings. And so not being able to integrate this in the curriculum meant that most of them would only be able to connect when they were at home. But if these hours and if these initiatives were not integrated in the curriculum, most students would not engage with it because, they would have to go to university to do the presential classes, plus do this without any credit or recognition recognition. So I would say that this is, institutional support is, one of the biggest challenges, at least from my perspective, that I can mention.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the integration and the recognition of the virtual exchanges or coils or however we are going to name them is a challenge. However, I was thinking that since virtual exchanges or coils they are related and they are linked with learning outcomes. I mean, even courses like I'm teaching physics, so one of or two of the learning outcomes of my physics courses, I'm directly link them with the virtual exchanges sessions. So I'm providing a solution or a different pathway for the students that they select this more international or the internationalization pathway of my course to select and learn these learning outcomes through these activities. However, in your case, I have realized also capacity building issues. Like you don't have the space for the students to go, even they are in the campus, to sit down within a computer, within their headphones, or all together in order to interact with the colleagues from abroad. I mean, in this case, probably, it's also, what can I say? This is also linked with the priority of the universities to internationalize themselves, and
Yeah.
if they realize how important is internationalization. And coming back to my question, I can see from your answer that another challenge is like if the courses are not accredited or they are not linked or integrated to the curriculum, why the students to follow them. However,
Exactly.
my other question comes from your answer is like, so what is the motivation of those that they participate?
This is an interesting question
Students
because,
and staff.
yeah, I would say that when the courses are integrated in the curriculum, the motivation is, of course, at least when they start, or when it's the first time they do a virtual exchange. Most of them, they do it because of the credit they get for the courses. But from my experience with the, I don't know, more than 10 virtual exchanges that I have led in Brazil with different partners in the world, I can say that although this may be the initial and like an extrinsic motivation, only the credits that they receive, in the end, and from their reflective portfolios and narratives and interviews with the students, we can see that the motivation is more intrinsic in the end. So they can see their personal and academic, professional, intercultural development as a result of engaging in these initiatives. And it's interesting because you said, for example, you do it with the physics course. I do it with different courses in my institution. But regardless of the content of the course that they engage in, I think this development of intercultural linguistic skills is a plus that most students report in the end. Even if they come from the hard sciences or the STEM, this is something that they may not envision or have this as an initial motivation because they don't know of the possibilities. But in the end, regardless of the area, most of them report that this is, the motivation for them to engage in second, third virtual exchange initiatives.
And so if I will ask Kyria Fynardi, so how much you have developed professionally or even your soft skills, before to experiment with virtual exchange and after those years, how much of virtual exchange experiences, how much Kyria Fynardi as an academic, as a faculty member has changed in in a good way. I mean, I cannot see, any negatives, but probably you can report. Probably
Yeah.
it's a burnout running the bureaucracy or etc. But let's keep, to have a positive meaning because also
Yeah.
we are one day before Christmas. So, I mean, if someone is going to listen, a young guy, a young professor, a
Mhm.
young colleague, why I should run virtual exchange and listen, someone that's very experienced like you. So, how you were before and how you are after, as faculty member.
Very good question, Costas. And this is going to link into another issue that we can discuss of how we can measure and evaluate, for example, a virtual exchange. But in my case, talking about my personal experience, I can say that it has changed what and who I am now as an academic, as a professor, as an educator, as a citizen who is concerned about building peace, global citizenship among university students. I think that university and higher education is still very much about different disciplines and courses. And we still have to learn how to develop transversal soft skills that are going to be interchangeable in all and important in all knowledge areas. Maybe this is the future, and we are seeing this in one of the courses that Impact is offering on AI, because it's transversal. I mean, it encompasses and it is a type of knowledge and soft skill that will probably be present in all the courses, all the students, and all the academics. And so I see this virtual exchange as having the potential of transforming not only the soft and transversal skills, but also the global citizenship development we have to build in our students for the future. We are preparing students for a future that has not yet arrived. And perhaps the only knowledge, content knowledge that we can hope to develop with them are those that are transversal, interdisciplinary, intercultural, because this is perhaps what is going to make a difference for the future. So I see it in my practice. It has made a lot of difference. Of course, as an academic, as a researcher, I had a network of colleagues, in different parts of the world, but being able to integrate my students and what I do in the university in these exchanges made all of the difference, because then it was not only me, Kyria, talking to my colleagues in other countries. It was me integrating my students, integrating what we do in education, in teaching, in research, in outreach in the university, together with these partners. And perhaps if I can add from a Global South perspective, although, as I said, I can consider myself a privileged person in the Global South, not only because of the languages I speak, because of the possibilities of interacting with colleagues from other countries, but this is not the reality of many other colleagues, be it for the costs, associated with traveling or learning other languages. So being able to include virtual exchange in what we do made possible not only for me, a privileged person, but all of the other less privileged, let's say, scholars, teachers, and students in the Global South to reach out, to include their voices and their perspectives in these global conversations. Until a virtual exchange was possible in higher education, I would say that, the exchanges of knowledge was very directional, very limited to certain countries, certain scholars, and certain people. And virtual exchange has democratized this access. So now, as we said in the beginning, if we consider that only 1% of students in Latin America can access physical mobility, virtual exchange made it possible not only for students, but also for the teachers and researchers involved to be able to have their voices heard and the knowledges that they produce also integrated in this global dialogue. So made a lot of a difference, all the difference actually.
Thank you. This is a very positive message that I support. Now, we are talking about that virtual exchange is like a pedagogy. So, I mean, it's a technology-based, let's say, tool or approach, but also is a pedagogy. I mean, what are the most, common pedagogies that you apply in order to be an efficient teacher through virtual exchanges? If your name is teacher, or, we can use another term like a moderator or a facilitator. So what are, two, three examples of pedagogies that you have applied and had an impact to the students' knowledge, but soft skills development? And then I will come back. How do you measure the impact of your virtual exchanges to the students?
Yeah. So talking about pedagogies, I was going to say that although you and I agree that virtual exchange is a pedagogy, a very important and relevant one, this is not a consensus with a lot of stakeholders. A lot of them just think of this as an innovation in terms of integration of technology in education. But I would say that virtual exchange is a lot more than simply doing what you are doing in person online, with different people across the planet. And so it is a pedagogy, but so as to be meaningful, and so as to have the impact that I envision a virtual exchange to have, it has to be carefully planned in terms of discussing and looking at the asymmetries that are included in the exchanges of knowledge. So situating and not only the planning, but carefully planning the tasks so as to be able to discuss not only power relations, but the languages involved, the knowledge construction and circulated involved in the virtual exchange. And I think that this is perhaps one of the most important facets of virtual exchange, because it can be used as a way to, if not equalize, but at least make the access and circulation, production of knowledge more equal in the world, with more people participating in this production and circulation of knowledge. I hope I
Excellent.
answered the question.
Yeah, very good, very well. So you mentioned something about languages, and
Yeah.
the lingua franca of virtual exchanges, at least on my eyes, is English. But we are
Yes.
talking about now whole continents like Latin America
Mhm.
or regions of Africa or
Mhm.
like Asia, that the lingua franca, the teaching language is not English. So you would like to promote somehow you would like to promote the global citizen attitude to all your students in order to be able also to be more employable. Because if
Yeah.
you know the culture of British, if you know the culture of Brazilian, then it's easier for me to come and work or interact and
Yes.
establish a collaboration with you. But there is an issue that the lingua franca now is English. So
Yeah.
how technology can help us in order to make virtual exchanges more democratic also to this way, to bring
Mhm.
students that they speak only Spanish with people that they speak only English or French or Greek. I mean, how we
Yeah.
can overcome without excluding people
Mhm.
because of the language barrier.
Mhm. Well, I can answer this giving another example, which is very relevant to us now with the impact initiative on AI in teaching that we are doing at the moment. Because just like AI, virtual exchange and English as a lingua franca can act as a double-faced sword, in the sense that it has a positive impact and a positive possibility. In the case of English as a lingua franca, there is a potential of including, integrating, and enabling the interaction of students with different linguistic backgrounds across the planet. So if it weren't for English as a lingua franca, then people of different linguistic backgrounds wouldn't be able to communicate. And we know that, of course, it enlarges significantly the potential of interaction and international communication. But just like AI, AI can also help a lot the interaction among different linguistic backgrounds because of the potential of translation of and interpretation of AI. But the downside or the risks involved in the use of English as a lingua franca or AI without acknowledging the risks associated with this are the strengthening or the reinforcement of, one language as the only hegemonic language. So English, for example, as not only the only language, but I would say more importantly, the only model, having the native speaker as the model. English, for those who are not from the linguistic area, English as a lingua franca means that the model or the English used is not the English that mirrors or imitates native speakers of one or other context. It means that speakers can use the language as a contact language. And this makes a lot of difference in virtual exchange, because if I take the principles of English as a lingua franca, I'm not going to attach the proficiency of the participants having as a standard the native speaker of such and such countries. I'm going to have the standard of interactions, the comprehension. So if there is intercomprehension, if people can understand what each other says, maybe resorting to approaches such as the intercomprehension approach, different multilingual approaches, even with the support of AI, which now is possible. Then we are enlarging the potential of AI and including more voices and languages. And so I'm not saying that English should not be used as a lingua franca. Of course, it has to be used, or it is used as a lingua franca, as you said, to enable employability. Not only transfer, but interactions of people from different linguistic backgrounds. But that would involve also having a different view of language and English in this case as a medium of communication of people with different linguistic backgrounds and having different models and standards for this used in virtual exchange, just like you and me now. So your first language is Greek, my first language is Portuguese, and we're interacting here in English as a lingua franca. None of us speak English as a first language or as a native. We don't have a native-like proficiency, and I'm actually very proud not to have a native-like proficiency because it means I have more than one language. In this case, English as a lingua franca, which is part of my repertoire. Not sure I answered your question. And just very briefly to link it to artificial intelligence, because I mentioned that it could also be a double-faced sword, artificial intelligence. As a language teacher, educator, and trainer, when AI emerged, I was very concerned about the future employability of my students. Because perhaps in the future, we are not going to teach languages, perhaps we're not going to train interpreters and translators because AI is going to do this for us. But as time passed and as we learned how to integrate AI in education and in teacher training, we can see that there is not only a limit to what AI can do, but the best use of AI is with the human in the loop. And so I can see that just as virtual exchange can be potentialized with the use of, with this perspective of English as a lingua franca, AI can also be potentialized and used in virtual exchange and also in education as a way to amplify possibilities of exchanges between multilingual speakers or speakers of different linguistic backgrounds. So even though they may not learn or be motivated to learn different languages, they may be more motivated and enabled to interact with people with different linguistic backgrounds, even if they don't speak that language, with the support of English as a lingua franca and perhaps AI for the translations.
Excellent. I think listening to you, Kyria, I think that AI with virtual exchange, they have more interlinks. It's not only that the AI will facilitate somehow to fill some gaps. You mentioned some of them are regarding language barriers. But I will say that virtual exchange as a pedagogy develops to the professors, but also to the attendees, our students, the soft skills that they will make the difference and they will support their integration within AI era. So, I mean, AI provides a lot of results, but this requires the knowledge, but also the critical thinking, the decision making in order to adapt or to reject. So, I will say, as a pedagogy virtual exchange, the role of facilitator, that you need to think what kind of questions you need to provide them in order to lead them or to tour them, to guide them through the achievement of their learning outcomes, develops these skills also to the trainer, but also to the students. And these skills comes the whole of your life, and this will make you more employable because you have the capacity, the competencies, even though that I'm talking about skills, but it's the capacity and competencies to distinguish what do you keep, how do you use it, and how do you move yourself ahead. So I think that is the best pedagogy
It
from
is.
the point of view of teaching and learning in order to adapt in this AI era. And
Yes, and
now,
even If I
please.
may add,
Yes.
Costas, to what you've just mentioned, if we also see virtual exchange as this third space or this arena where we can discuss, problematize, and question certain knowledges, we can even use virtual exchange as a third space or as an arena for discussion, for example, to fight the problems or the risks associated with AI. I also see AI as, a possibility with virtual exchange for this. So, for example, one of the problems associated with artificial intelligence, which is, the bias, cultural bias, linguistic bias, because we know that the large language models, they're trained with English. And so, and with certain, stereotypes. If we use virtual exchange as an arena to deconstruct and question this bias, and also to include more data and more experience and more situated knowledge from different cultural, geographical, and linguistic backgrounds, perhaps we are making, a win-win, the best of the two worlds. So I definitely agree with you on that. Yeah.
And you just reveal the impact, not of the project, but the impact of virtual exchanges to peace and
Yes.
to the establishment of peace, and
Yes.
also to lower, let's say, the stereotypes that exist between
Yes.
the people. Is the third space that provides the
Yes.
space for the people to communicate, is inclusive, because you don't need all of them to travel,
Yeah.
let's say, to Geneva in order to
Yes.
negotiate. But you can, build this culture of collaboration and
Yeah.
how to disagree within
Hmm.
discussion, debating, and at the
Yeah.
same time to cultivate all the skills that you mentioned.
Yeah, but I may add, Costas, that
Please.
this is not a characteristic of virtual exchange. And going back to your first question, how we differentiate virtual exchange, for example, from COIL or other terminology, I would say that so as to be able to deconstruct and to have this reflective, transversal development of these skills and global citizenship that combats or that promotes peace building among the different cultures, because it makes us learn more about the other or the different cultures. This has to be pedagogically and intentionally designed. So I see a lot of virtual exchanges or a lot of coils or online exchanges that are not necessarily used as a third space to discuss, to question. So they may even reinforce actually stereotypes and the difference, rather than showing that we as human beings, we have a lot more in common than different. So to make virtual exchange a potential for global citizenship education, peace building, and all of the transversal soft skills that we mentioned, I think it has to be carefully and pedagogically designed, intentionally designed to question this. One way of doing this is, for example, to make language and cultures as part of the content, not as something that we take for granted. Okay, so we have English as a medium of, the communication. No, we put this at the center. So we discuss the languages that we are using for the encounters. We discuss the cultures that are part of the encounters, and this enables us to fight rather than strengthen stereotypes associated with different cultures. Sorry for the interruption.
No, no, I think that, be a Greek with a Brazilian speaker, we can make, a very interactive discussion and discuss a lot of issues. So, in order to close the role of AI in the virtual exchanges, I mean, can you see any other role of AI in order to facilitate the impact of virtual exchanges to professors, also to the students, apart of the languages?
Yes, as I said, when we consider, for example, virtual exchanges between Global North and Global South, there are many issues that we have to take into consideration, such as access to different technologies, access to different infrastructure, as I just mentioned in my case here at UFIS. And so, if we include the difference in access to technology, to languages, to knowledges, as part of the discussions, perhaps we are helping our students become aware of the differences in the world. And by becoming aware of the differences, perhaps work together to combat the gap, and not only the linguistic gap, but the digital gap and the many others social justice gaps that we have in the world. And by doing so, I think we will be promoting what I really understand as a global citizenship education, or peace building strategies. Because by understanding that we are all part of the same humanity, the same world. I mean, if we haven't learned this, and obviously we haven't, I mean, looking at the scenario we have nowadays in the world, if we haven't learned our hard lessons with the pandemic, something isolated that started, in a particular space or country in the world, and then ended up affecting everyone else. If we didn't learn that we are more connected and more interdependent than the other from humanity, then perhaps virtual exchange is one possibility to teach us this hard lesson. So, and again, when we think about, for example, the strategies that we developed to combat the pandemic, I think researchers across the globe were able to come up with a vaccine in record time only because they were able to collaborate internationally. And they were able to do this through these virtual exchanges that they had, because we couldn't travel, we couldn't meet physically. And so this has taught us that we can achieve a lot more if we collaborate, if we understand that although we may live in different locations and speak different languages, we are all connected and interdependent on each other, and we have a lot more in common than different. So we should be learning more about the other if we want, the other to be part of our family, which is, this planet.
Thank you. So, Kyria, also you mentioned the word research. So you are an active researcher, checking your profile in Scopus and in Google Scholar. What are the open research questions if someone would like to be involved in research around virtual exchanges? Can you name, if this is
Yeah.
possible, open research questions regarding this pedagogy and this technological tool?
Yes. Well, I would say that in terms of the research for virtual exchange, it is still limited to qualitative study cases, descriptive reports of, initiatives that have been taken up. So I would say that what is lacking, or one of the gaps that we have in research in terms of virtual exchange, is the use of more longitudinal and perhaps quantitative or mixed methods approaches that can actually measure the impact, not the program, but the results of certain virtual exchanges, and also not only measure the impact on learning, the impact on the development of global citizenship education, but perhaps, and I am very ambitious in thinking of what research can achieve, why not measure the impact on this, on peace building, on different relations between countries, and different relationship between university and society. So what are we doing in university? Is it only producing knowledge, or should our ambition be a little bit bigger, and think if this knowledge cannot help us live better with each other, then what's the use of it, right? So I
Excellent.
think it's a big potential. Yeah.
And reaching, the end, I would like you with one sentence or with one word. What is for you a virtual exchange?
Virtual exchange is the possibility to make internationalization of education more accessible, inclusive, and, if pedagogically designed and planned, more ethical, and with potential to peace building. This is virtual exchange for me.
Excellent. So before I thank you, I would like to keep some keywords that I kept, in the old-fashioned way by writing with my pen. Here, like if I would like, a message from Kyria Fynardi, virtual exchange is a tool, a pedagogical tool that provides more access to the knowledge, more access to the research, promotes the internationalization and collaboration among Global South, within global south and global north. It provides a third space for people to speak and disagree, and also try to overcome and lower barriers, to reject stereotypes, or learn how to live with the stereotypes in order to build digital and AI literacy, but also peace and collaboration within the university stakeholders, with the university, with the society, within global players. Because what do you target with the virtual exchange is this global citizen attitude to accept the difference, to collaborate with the difference, and move ahead. So with this, Professor Fynardi, dear Kyria, I would like to thank you for sharing with us these 45 minutes, your insights and your vision. We appreciate a lot as a community of practice through the impact, but also within the Hellenic Mediterranean University in Crete, Greece. Thank you, obrigado, very much, and Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you. And we are looking forward to meeting you again face to face or and online. Thank you.
Yes. Hopefully, thank you, Costas, very much, and thank Impact, the not only the program but also the possibility I had to visit the Hellenic University in the beautiful, I think one of the most beautiful cities in the world, Crete. I strongly suggest everyone who hasn't had the opportunity to do this. It's fantastic. So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon in Greece, in Crete, if possible. Thank you.
I will come to Brazil as well. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.